Oh, hi, Mark. And Merry Christmas, fiddlefuckers. Today, we'll be reviewing an all time classic. But first, I guess I'll give you the opening spiel about what the movie's about, as if you don't already know. Black Christmas is a 1974 horror movie directed by Bob Clark. Yes, that Bob Clark, the same Bob Clark that directed A Christmas Story, and is about a sorority house full of women who start receiving obscene phone calls, and slowly they begin to get picked off. So it is a slasher movie. So yeah, I guess let's cut right into it. I just watched this, obviously. Nice Scream Factory Blu-ray. Beautiful, beautiful cover art. I think that's the original cover art. But anyway, the film opens immediately with, well, it opens and closes at more or less the same way. And I love the way it opens, and I love the way it closes. Sorry, I'm having hair difficulties. You don't give a shit. But it opens, and immediately you're met with whistling wind and the atmosphere and imagery of a cold December day, and I love that. It I mean, they it does a great job of just immediately establishing that atmosphere. The film feels cold from then on. The whistling wind, it does a great job of setting up that atmosphere. Um, so we have this sorority house of sisters, and they start getting these phone calls. This is towards the beginning of the film, and immediately this guy establishes who he is, which is a fucking weirdo. He starts saying all this nasty shit. I mean, nasty shit. Like, you have to pay a porn star a lot of money to say this shit on camera. All right. And he, uh, he, he seems to have been a recurring caller before this scene, because when he gets there, one of them said, Jess says, it's the moaner again. So I guess they've received these phone calls a number of times, in which they do say later in the movie that it's possible that this killer has been calling after every murder that's taken place, which it's revealed later that a 13-year-old girl was murdered and disposed of in the park. So it's very possible that the killer here has something to do with that. Um, and so that would kind of make sense if he called after that murder, and then he called just before he committed the next murder, which is Claire's murder, which, um, again, immediately sets up who he is, because, which is a disgusting psychopath, because Claire is probably the most innocent person in this sorority. At least that's how she's portrayed. Um, and just immediately, the movie wants you to know it's not fucking around, because as soon as we see the killer physically, um, for the first time, well, not for the first time, we see his hands and stuff, but we see him behind the like plastic in Claire's closet, and I don't know if it's the actual cat or if he's imitating a cat. I kind of think he's imitating a cat, which makes it even creepier. But he's like in a compartment behind Claire's closet, imitating a cat to make her come to the closet, and then he suffocates her to death with a plastic bag, which is just absolutely horrifying. Again, it immediately sets the mood. It immediately lets you know who this guy is. um, which is evil scum. So, right off the bat, he has killed our most innocent character in this entire movie. She's done for. Um, though, during that first phone call, well, the first phone call we hear, because obviously he's called before, but the first phone call we hear, uh, Barb makes a really amusing remark. And I just want to mention it because I I love it. But it's oh, what did she say? It was something about who do you think it was? Do you think it was some weirdo, or I don't know, something like that. I'm paraphrasing obviously. I don't fucking remember the exact lines from the movie. But Barb looks at her and she goes, "No, it's the Mormon Tabernacle Choir making their annual obscene phone call." That line amuses me because I really want that to be a thing now. Like, can the Mormon Tabernacle Choir just call me? And actually, that sounds a lot more sus than I meant it to. I was just meaning that it'd be funny, guys. I was just meaning that it's a hilarious concept, and it is. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir's annual obscene phone call. Great line. And the calls are creepy. They are very creepy. Especially that first one. That first one's about as vile as the phone calls get. The other ones are a lot more suggestive, which, in a way, the suggestive ones are even more creepy. Of course, the 2006 remake of Black Christmas, Black Xmas, took those phone calls and ran with them as an idea to give the killer a backstory, which wasn't a terrible idea because when you listen to these phone calls, I do think that these phone calls come from because obviously this killer is like ill, like he is unwell. I mean, on top of being evil, but he is also very mentally ill. He is off. And so I do think these phone calls that he's making and the content in them, things like, "Where's the baby? Where's Agnes?" You know, when he's saying all this crazy shit, it kind of makes you think. Obviously, there's more here that we're missing. Like, what do you mean? Where's the baby? Where's Agnes? What your mother and I need to know is like it's all just the way it comes across is like fragmented memories from his past that he's just reciting. Um, and that makes it all the more unsettling. Of course, the 2006 remake didn't do it in a great way. I think they made it a little too over the top. But we're not reviewing that movie now, or probably this year at all, because I don't even own that movie. I do like that movie, though. Um, but don't expect a review of it this year. But oh god, and then Barb. Oh, Barb's a bit of a bitch. She's not the greatest person in this movie. She just kind of says things to provoke people. Kind of like, I mean, after the obscene phone caller, the killer of the film is done with his first shit, she gets on the phone, starts talking to him, and she's just talking to him to provoke him. She's just talking to him to piss him off. But that's not what makes her bitchy. That's kind of cool. Like, it might not be the smartest thing. I don't think Barb's the smartest character, but I do I do enjoy that she got on the phone just to piss this guy off that was calling into the sorority house. Um, but she says something awful immediately after that, and they're talking about how you shouldn't piss someone like that off. Like recently, a town girl got raped by someone like that, and Barb responds with, "You can't rape a townie," which is just a horrible thing to say. And Claire actually gets pissed off, which makes her go up into her room to pack her stuff. Her father was supposed to show up the next day, and Claire obviously is murdered. That is the scene where she's murdered, and yeah, that the opening kill is horrifying, absolutely haunting. Um, and then we have Jess's character, who is pregnant. And here we start kind of a subplot. I don't know if you'd call it a subplot, or maybe it's more of a, because it's not really a plot that's explored. Well, it sort of is, I suppose, with the whole Peter angle, because this creates a red herring in Peter. But more than anything, I think it's because this movie does have an agenda. This was made to be an inherently feminist film, um, which isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. And by the way, if you're going to make a movie uh, about feminism, or, something like that, Black Christmas is how to do it. I mean, this movie wasn't shoving things down your throat at all. Maybe in like one or two places it could have handled it a little better, but realistically, this movie had a lot of subtlety to it with its themes. I mean, the killer was obviously a misogynist. It's all handled very well. It's not being shoved down your throat. So I don't mind that this is a feminist movie, though I do think, and this is where a lot of us are going to disagree. That's fine. We can disagree. I do think that the issue that's brought up in this movie as the main issue, where the director seems to be directing his agenda in, is the abortion issue. And I can't say that's a feminist issue. I like I said, I think a lot of us are going to disagree. That's fine. You can have your opinion. So it's great about the world. Obviously, there are two different sides of this. I think you probably know my side by me just saying that. I'm not trying to force my politics on you. But when you look at it through that angle, you see the character of Peter, and depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you're going to think of Peter as two very different things. You're going to think of him in two very different ways. Obviously, the one side is going to think of Peter as kind of crazy, which he does behave in a couple of crazy ways. He crashes a piano. He almost looks a little nutty in the end when he breaks the window of the basement and gets in there, and he's like, Jess, you had me worried," which is what they were trying to do, obviously, because they were trying to set up Peter as this red herring. But at the end of the day, the other side is going to see Peter for what I think he is, which is just a guy who obviously doesn't look at this issue in the same way as Jess does, whereas she's obviously very pro that thing, and Peter's very against it. Well, actually, you don't really know if Peter is against it in general, or if he's just against it for his baby, which is understandable, because he says it a number of times. He's like, "Jess, you can't kill my baby. You can't kill our baby." So obviously, the reason Peter is behaving this way is because he thinks it's a matter of life or death for his child. And to be fair to his character, even though he behaves nutty in a couple of scenes, he does everything right. As far as, if that's your viewpoint, if you share a viewpoint with Peter as opposed to Jess, he does do everything right. And I mean, even if you share Jess's viewpoint, you can still look at Peter as a character, and minus the threat where he goes, "Jess, if you have an abortion, you'll be very sorry." That was not great. But he does everything right. He's like, "Hey, look, I knocked you up. My bad. And then he's like, I I'm going to give up my dreams, my hopes and dreams, and I'm going to get married. We're going to get married because you're not going to do this alone, but we need to take responsibility for our actions, and we need to raise this baby. I need to marry you because I did a goof. Well, you let me do that goof to you, but I did that goof. And so now I need to take responsibility for it. And that's the responsible thing to do. Good job, Peter. Congratulations. You did it good. But then of course Jess doesn't want to. She says she has hopes and dreams. Peter calls her selfish for this, which, yeah, she kind of is. But at the same time, if you look at it through her perspective, that's not she's if you look at it through her perspective, she doesn't think she's being selfish because she doesn't. At one point in the movie, Peter says, you're talking about this like you're having a wart removed. And more than likely, that's how she sees it. And so it's just not as big of a deal to her. But obviously, Peter has a very different opinion on the matter. So I'm done talking about that. I understand that's a controversial topic. I'm not a political channel. I actually avoided talking about this movie because I knew if I talked about this movie, I would have to talk about that scene, even if it was fairly brief. I would have to talk about that dynamic that was in there because it is a fairly big part of the movie. It creates this whole red herring where you think it's Peter. That's the whole reason that the movie ends the way it ends. So there it is. I won't be talking about that any further. Sorry if I pissed you off, but these movie reviews are my opinion. All right, so it's cool that you have your own. I have my own. This movie review is my opinion. If you have a different one, make your movie review and state your opinion in it. But this one is mine. So, oh yeah, Mrs. Mack. She's awesome. Mrs. Mack is introduced to us. She comes through the door. I think this is before Claire is killed. I mean, she's killed fairly soon after. But Mrs. Mack comes through the door with her arms full of presents. She's like, I've been shopping. And the girls are like, hey, we got you something. And she's like, oh, you shouldn't have. And she opens it up, and it's this hideous nightgown moo-moo sort of thing. She's like, you really shouldn't have. And she keeps that energy throughout the entire movie. Like, she's I don't know how to describe her. She is a profane old lady, and I love it. She's always walking around the sorority house, and she has booze hidden everywhere. She's just pulling sherry casked whiskey out of every crevice of this sorority. At least I think it's sherry casked whiskey, because I've never seen like sherry, like wine, in a 375 milliliter bottle like she keeps pulling out. I don't know. Maybe but I didn't pay that close of attention to the label. But yeah, her whole shtick is funny. She's just this profane old lady, and then in front of Claire's father, she's really nice. Oh, this is very kind of you, Mr. Matthews, or whatever the guy's name was. This is very kind indeed. And then he turns his back, and she's like, Whiskers, you little prick, get down here. I'd love her character. And then, of course, we have the legend that is John Saxon. I think the guy's awesome in everything that he's in, that I've seen him in anyway. I haven't seen him in many films. I've seen him in, of course, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, this movie, and then The Girl Who Knew Too Much, which was another awesome movie. Probably not as good as Black Christmas, but it was an awesome movie. But yeah, just John Saxon. John Saxon's presence is a plus in anything. I like looking at the guy's face. Guy's a badass. And then we have, I think we go a while without an actual death scene. Mostly, most of the horror comes through these phone calls. At least throughout the movie, most of the horror comes through these phone calls that they're getting, these obscene phone calls. And then, of course, they discover a little girl's body in the park, which I've already covered. Um, and then we get Billy in the attic, of course, lashing out, which is another part where the horror comes in. But then, after quite a while of no kills, I'm thinking, we get Barb's death, which is possibly one of the most haunting scenes in the movie. If it's not, then it's like second most haunting. But Barb is sleeping. She got way too drunk, and so she went up there and she went to sleep, and she's been sleeping for a while now in movie time. And Billy, or our killer, we just kind of assume his name is Billy because he's always saying things like, "It's me, Billy." You just kind of assume that's the guy's name. Billy had escaped from the attic earlier in the night, and he posted himself up in that bedroom where Barb is sleeping. Or rather, he walks in when Barb is sleeping, but then he posts himself up in the bedroom where Barb is sleeping. And right as we get this kill, we get a band of Christmas carolers that knock on the sorority house's door, and they're singing "Oh Come Let Us Behold Him." I'm pretty sure it was the song they're singing. And that song matches up perfectly with that kill. Billy comes in the room, and of course, I completely breezed over it, and I didn't mean to. But right before Billy kills her, she wakes up and she's like hyperventilating. And she has an inhaler, and she needs the inhaler. And she's talking to Jess because Jess heard her from the other room. And she's hyperventilating. She's like, "I had a nightmare that there was a stranger coming into my room." And of course, we as the audience know that wasn't a nightmare. That was Billy coming into her room, which is really, that makes the scene almost sad in a way, and I don't quite know why. It has something to do with the fact that she's drunk, and it's tragic that if she hadn't been drinking, more than likely she would have recognized that as reality, and she could have gotten herself out of that situation. But since she was drinking, she didn't know if it was a dream or real life. She just assumed that it was a dream. And so she ends up taking her inhaler in, and she goes back to sleep. And Jess answers the door to those Christmas carolers singing "Come, oh come let us behold him," or whatever that song's called. I don't know the name of it. And the haunting, their voices are haunting is what I mean. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm overusing that word, but I can't think of any other word that better describes it. And we see Billy at the foot of her bed. He grabs the unicorn. She has this glass unicorn on her nightstand, and he grabs it. And he says something like, "Billy, or Agnes, it's me, Billy." And then he starts to stab her to death with the unicorn. Meanwhile, outside, you have these Christmas carolers singing this song about worshiping Jesus. And then in here, it's death and murder. And I think it must be the juxtaposition of the beautiful music and the children's angelic faces to Barb being stabbed to death brutally in the other room that makes that scene so completely horrifying. And it's one of my favorite scenes. I think it is my favorite kill scene just because everything works so well in it, in my opinion. So that is what it is. Then of course they end up going to the police. I think this was a little before Barb has her death scene, and they have them track the calls, or they try to have them track the calls. And of course, we all know the twist. It's in other movies too. It's in When a Stranger Calls. It's in other stuff. It's not just Black Christmas. Shocker, the calls are coming from inside the house. And so the police Sergeant Nash, he calls in to the sorority house, and he tells Jess, set the phone down, go to the front door, leave the house. Like, don't ask any questions, just do it. She keeps asking questions, which you suck at following directions, okay? Horrible at it. But she keeps asking questions, and finally he's like, the calls are coming from inside the house. Like, you need to get out. And she's like, oh, I gotta go get Phil first. Phyllis. I gotta go get Phyllis and Barbara. Okay, so firstly, I want to address something about this scene. Firstly, what's her name? Olivia Hussey, the woman who plays Jess. Olivia Hussey's performance in this moment, fantastic. It is. Like, she has a mini panic attack when she gets to the door, when he tells her that. It's really well acted. But then it's followed up by one of the dumbest decisions in horror movie history, which I understand she felt she had to go save her friends. But it is one of the dumbest decisions, because he just told you that the calls are coming from inside the house. The room that your friends are in is the only other room in the house with a telephone. So do you think maybe that's where the killer is? So if you know that both your friends are in this room, these calls are coming from inside the house, you haven't heard from your friends in a while, do you think, just maybe, just possibly, just a little bit, maybe they're dead? I mean, it could be a possibility, a minor one. Like, maybe my friends are dead. I don't know. I'm not sure. No, your friends are dead. Get out of the house. It's not complicated. But, of course, she doesn't, because we have to have this final scene where she goes up into the bedroom, finds both of her friends dead, and then we get one of the scariest shots of the whole movie, which is a shot of the killer's eye. The light's hitting his eye just right to where, firstly, it makes the colors in his eyes look absolutely wild. But then also, I mean, it's so creepy. It is so creepy, because all you see is the guy's eye. You don't see his full face. You never do, actually. You never see the killer's face other than his eye through this crack in the door. And when it's focused in on that shot of his eye, he does the "Hey Agnes, it's me, Billy" thing again. And she immediately realizes she done goofed and goes to get out of the house, realizes she locked the door. Yeah, good job on that one, by the way. And she's unable to unlock it, I guess. I guess maybe it was because she got that feeling you get, like when someone's chasing you or something, you get that feeling that makes you want to get the fuck out of there. And so she, and not to mention, I think it was chain locked, so it would have taken a little more time. So she runs down to the basement where she hides, and Billy is banging at the door like a madman and just screaming. Billy is batshit insane. I mean, he is a ravenous maniac. Um, and then all of a sudden, you just hear it stop, and you hear him calmly walk away, which is another thing that's utterly horrifying. He flips like that, like he switches up so fast. Um, and then, of course, we have Peter comes to the window. You can clearly see it's Peter through the window, and he breaks the window of the basement because he heard screaming inside, and he heard it come from the basement. He goes down there. He sees Jess. He's like, "Hey, what was all the yelling about?" Now, at this point in time, we had already established that the killer is not Peter. I want you to remember that, because at one point when she was talking to John Saxon, she was like, "No, it couldn't have been Peter because Peter was with me during one of the phone calls, so it couldn't have been Peter." But she is still horrified of Peter in this scene. He's like, "Hey, you had me worried. What's going on?" Peter keeps getting closer. She doesn't say anything to him, mind you. She doesn't say, "Peter, stop. Stop walking towards me, Peter. Back up, Peter. Get out of my space, Peter. It's called personal space, Peter, and you're not abiding by it." She doesn't do any of that. She just kills him. And like I said, it's already been established at this point, Peter isn't the caller. So what makes you think that this guy that's in your house, who is obviously the caller, who has been saying the same things to you in person as he has been over the phone, what makes you think that that person is Peter? A little wacky. A little wacky, a little wonky. I think that Olivia Hussey's character Jess made two incredibly stupid decisions at the end of this movie, and I think it's I think they're pretty unforgivably dumb. The rest of the movie I think is great. I think the decisions are fine. Um, but yeah, she just straight up kills Peter, and then of course we get that fantastic ending where they think it's over. They think Peter is the killer, and they have Jess sleeping in the upstairs bedroom, and they finally clear out to let Jess get some sleep because she's just experienced something incredibly traumatic. They clear out to let Jess get some sleep, and it cuts. Well, it doesn't cut, actually. It doesn't cut at all. The camera goes up into the attic where Billy, or our killer, whoever the hell he is still up there, and you hear him breathing and you hear him muttering to himself like he has been all movie, and you realize that Jess has been left here with the killer in the house alone. And it just pans back from the attic, it pans out the window to show a shot of Claire in the attic, still dead with a bag over her face, which is another one of those just horrifying shots. And it pans out to show the house, and then you hear the phone start ringing, which is just chill inducing. Guys, I love Black Christmas. It's kind of funny to me because Bob Clark not only directed one of the most joyful Christmas movies of all time, he also directed probably the most horrifying. And that is what this movie is. It is horrifying, it's terrifying, it is effective in every way humanly possible. And I love it. I love to watch it every Christmas. I watch it sometimes multiple. Like last year, I think I watched this movie like 4 times over the course of December. And yeah, guys, if you haven't seen Black Christmas, first of all, I'm ashamed of you for watching the spoiler review. But at the same time, please watch Black Christmas if you haven't seen it. And I think I'm going to give Black Christmas like a 9.5 out of 10. It's I would give it a 10. There's just a couple of things that I'm not huge on. But realistically, it's not even enough to bring it down a full point for me. I think it's fantastic in every way, shape, and form. So, Black Christmas, 9.5 out of 10. What do you guys give it? Merry Christmas, you butt-touching mother lovers. And, well, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Okay, there are 3 types of people on this planet, and that's liars, damn liars, and very big damn liars. I'm not closing out the video yet, just because I wanted to do this. This was an this is an idea I had to open the video. Actually, was to put a Santa hat on. He doesn't like it. Oh, okay. Was to put a Santa hat on Lucio, and well, we see how that turned out. But I wanted to at least try it, because that shit's funny as hell. I wouldn't usually make him wear a fucking Santa hat, but okay, calm down. Damn. All right, now I'll catch you guys in the next one.